The following broadcast show does not reflect the views or opinions of this station or any of its affiliates. The content and views are intended for the purposes of entertainment. Bearing Our Souls is a show about the now, the before, and the afterlife, hosted by radio and TV producer Ron Denner. We are pleased to welcome our special guest Sarah Terry from England into our studios today. She is here to shake up the status quo by talking about the mystical, the taboo, and the forbidden. Sarah is an author of 2 books that explore the nature of our current reality and that are designed to stretch your imagination to see what reality could look like if we allow ourselves to believe and project what we want it to be.
Sarah, we're so fortunate to have you here with us. I want to begin the show by exploring your background a little. How old were you when you began writing, and what urged you to start writing?
Well, thank you so much, Ron, for having me on the show, and I'm really happy to be here today. I was 33 when I started writing because it was something that I felt called to do.
Can you tell our listeners what do you mean by called to do?
Yes, of course. So a calling on one's life implies that one has a mission of some sort, a destiny that is written into the blueprint of one's life.
That sounds like a very strange thing to happen to someone. Did this come as a surprise, or were you expecting it?
Yes, it was a surprise, Ron, and I wasn't expecting it. I was actually dumbfounded when I realised that my life had changed trajectory so suddenly. I mean, one minute I was just normal old me humming along, and the next minute I was devouring every book I could get my hands on. And in conjunction with that, I was writing notes to clarify my thoughts, and my notes quickly became a book, and here I am today talking about it.
Boy, that must have been a shock. How long did it take you for you to adjust to the new set of circumstances?
About 6 weeks, I guess. At first, I thought I'd lost my mind, like I was enduring some sort of inner hallucination. But I finally acknowledged that something mysterious was actually taking place, and I'd better get used to it.
What was your life like at the time you got this calling?
It was at a time in my life that I had everything that I thought would make me happy. I was married to my Prince Charming with 3 healthy children, a fancy house, fancy cars, you name it. But I was actually disgruntled and moody, an unhappy woman.
It really sounds like you must have been a joy to live with. Tell us, Sarah, why do you think you were so unhappy?
Well, looking back, I would attribute it to the fact that I didn't have much of a childhood in the way that many children experience it. And I did not know what happiness looked like. I'd had many moments of pleasure, but pleasure is always fleeting.
What do you mean? What was your childhood like?
Well, I experienced a very difficult childhood, being the products of broken home and the snags and snares associated with parents who had no idea why they were born either.
Oh, boy. Sounds like everyone was winging it.
Yes, we were. I experienced a lot of intense emotions and a lot of scene changes as my mother moved us from town to town and man to man. But I was able to emancipate myself at the age of 16 and was very glad to be in charge of my own life.
I'm glad, too. Now, can you talk a bit about your time as a young adult and the direction your life took?
Sure. Well, I spent a few years doing various menial jobs until I landed my dream job as a stewardess for British Airways. And British Airways was the creme de la creme in terms of money, long layovers and opulent hotels. And I spent 5 years straight globetrotting, 747 being my transport.
Wow.
Yeah. And this was the second time in my short life that I was submerged into absorbing the reality of the human condition in every country I visited.
What do you mean by absorbing the reality of the human condition?
Well, I visited many countries and continents, Europe, South America, Africa, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, Japan, yeah, just on and on. And the wealthier countries like Australia and New Zealand were a lot like America, but it was the third world countries that were very jarring to me. I was absolutely stunned, Ron, to see how much of the world lived in abject poverty.
Really? That must have been upsetting for such a young lady. Tell me, what was your favorite place to visit, and what was the worst place you've been to?
Well, America is by far the best country I've ever been to, and I'm very glad to be a citizen of this great land. Now, the worst place Calcutta in India. Unless one is very wealthy in that country, most people live like dogs.
Wow. That's a lot to absorb.
Yeah.
It certainly sounds like your childhood upbringing in globe-trotting spurned and laid the groundwork for your career as a writer. Take us back to the time you felt your calling.
Okay, so after I had wallowed in my self-pity for long enough, I decided to pray to ask for guidance to my predicament of being unfulfilled and unhappy. And I ended my prayer with a petition. And I said, please help me understand what it is that I obviously don't. I'll wait to hear from you. Amen. So I should warn our listeners here, Ron, be careful what you wish for or what you pray for, because it wasn't long after that my life changed instantly and irrevocably.
You have such a diversified and interesting background. Let's get into some thought-provoking conversations.
You bet, Ron. I can't wait.
Tell our listeners, what is the difference between being spiritual and being religious?
Well, religion is an outward expression of devotion to the divine, and spirituality is when we turn our attention inwards to seek the divine essence we were all born with. I mean, I've sat in pews of churches surrounded by spiritual people, loving, kind people who take their spiritual journey very seriously. And I've sat in pews of churches surrounded by very unspiritual people. People would take advantage if they had the opportunity. So, I mean, we shouldn't assume that just because one is a churchgoer, one is necessarily spiritual.
I agree with you. Can a person be spiritual and not religious?
That's a great question. A person can be both. A spiritual person might not feel compelled to go to church or formally worship, preferring instead to talk with the divine within the comfort of their own head. The mystics throughout the ages wrote about their personal encounters with God, so one could commune with the divine in a church pew or while peeling the potatoes.
You mentioned monotheism in your book. What is meant by that?
Well, monotheism is the belief that our Creator is a separate, all-powerful being who is separate from his creations and does not participate in the human drama. He resides in another dimension and exercises his power to bless us or curse us in this lifetime. And after that, he determines whether we go to heaven or hell.
Ooh, heaven and hell. Those are big concepts. Do you believe in the possibility that human beings will wind up in such places? And what do you think I will wind up?
Ron, my darling, you are destined for heaven, so don't worry about a damn thing. Yes, I do believe in the concept of heaven, which is quite a relief. But the fiery furnace of eternal torment for those who don't believe certain doctrine appears to me to be a worn-out tool to keep human beings fearful and constricted. And there's no other explanation for it.
What's another drawback to the doctrines of this type of religion?
Well, the biggest one for me is the idea that human beings are living in a defiled reality because a fallen angel is on the loose. It's just the eons-old mythological battle of good and evil playing out in the modern world.
So am I right to assume that the belief can be attributed to the fact that many people make poor choices but remain unaccountable because we believe that the devil is responsible for the messes we create?
Yeah, you nailed it there. When a belief system speaks of dark forces being at play, it's easy to be unaccountable, and the consequence, and quite understandably, is a lot of fear is associated with the idea that one is not in control of one's reality.
Are there any pitfalls we should be aware of when we believe in the traditional forces of good and evil battling for supremacy?
To believe that a happy ending for the entire planetary population does not happen just for a chosen few, this causes fear. People are left wondering whether they might not make it.
I can see that. It could be a heavy burden for some.
Yeah, absolutely. And when fear becomes the bedrock of one's spiritual journey, self-empowerment is so much harder to imagine, let alone to achieve.
What is self-empowerment?
Well, in a nutshell, self-empowerment is the conviction that one is in control of one's reality, not someone else.
Does that belief that our Creator is separate from the human condition He created lead one to adapt atheism as an alternative?
Yes, I believe it can do, most certainly. A good part of the secular population cannot reconcile human suffering with the existence of a caring and compassionate Creator. So they decide to live their life as if everything is just a random load of chance happening without purpose or spiritual meaning.
What is the difference between an atheist and an agnostic?
An atheist does not believe in the existence of a transcendental reality, period. An atheist is a person that believes life is just an accident, a person who believes that when he dies, he will rot in the ground and become a potent form of fertilizer, and his consciousness is forever extinct. And an agnostic suspends belief in favour of sitting on the fence because he has not yet seen sufficient evidence that the world was created supernaturally with a specific purpose in mind.
But both the atheist and agnostic see the world as random, right?
Yes. The best they can do is hope to have a good lunch.
You speak about the necessity of hope in your book. Can you talk a bit about why this doesn't jibe with the notion of that life is random?
Sure. So when we see the world as a big, fat, godless, random machine, it infers that life has no divine purpose or meaning. So a happy ending full of hope and promise is not necessarily considered useful, let alone essential.
Okay, does the Western religion talk about hopeful outcome being on the cards?
No, not at all. The belief system does not speak about a happy ending for all humans, just the much prophesied cosmic conclusion to the mythological war between good and evil that we somehow found ourselves caught up in. Some people scrape through, but half of us don't.
Oh, my.
Yeah. This spiritual worldview has actually cast out hope because the future is cast in stone. But hope is essential to human flourishing. Hope is the building block to creating a better future for all of humanity. Hope is the culmination to our evolution.
Hope is the outcome of evolution? What do you mean by that?
Well, when one believes one lives in a world without hope, one inadvertently projects doom and gloom, and then this gets embedded into the fabric of our shared reality. It is generally understood and utterly defended in the field of metaphysics that projecting a good outcome by having hope is crucial to a species who are actually creating reality with their minds.
What is self-realization? How does that attribute to positive outcome?
Well, self-realization, I believe, is the point at which a believer begins to understand that it is they who are creating their reality, not some separate monotheistic deity. Self-realization is the point at which a believer comes to understand just how powerful their minds are.
Please elaborate.
Okay, so those who are self-realized, that is, those who have awoken to the enormity of their own power, attempt to use that power to help co-create a better world in whatever sphere of influence that happens to be. One could be a writer, a waiter, a school teacher, or an engineer.
I see. Human empowerment is contrary to what much of the Western world believes about the nature of reality.
Yeah, for sure. A self-realized person is someone who understands that we are able and destined to create heaven on earth as the finale to our earthly evolution. I mean, goodness knows what comes after that. But, we live for eternity, so we have to do something to fill in the time.
Do you feel society has begun the process already?
Yes, I do, Ron. I really do. Countless people feel disempowered and hopeless. And this has been going on for a while now. And we've seen it all play out on our TV screens all across America in recent months. I mean, we've had riots, revolts and rebellions, and people are sick of it. But it is their disenchantment that actually spurs a new age by the closing out of an old one. Changing their beliefs about the nature of this existence is the remedy for hopelessness. And that means a new age of powerfulness is what we should be creating.
Do you feel that the big God, little human idea of reality is self-limiting?
Yes, human beings have been credited as being the products of a cosmic catastrophe that was a perversion of what God originally intended. I mean, most of us were told at birth that we were born sinners as a result of nothing we actually did. This is a horrible declaration of faith.
Am I correct in saying that you have a very, very strong passion about setting this wrong right?
Yes, I would like to try.
What, in your opinion, is the matter of this issue?
Okay, so organised religion attempts to maintain their version of dogma that not only keeps us small, it actually keeps God's plan for the human race small too. And it's my belief that the monotheistic view of reality is actually belittling to an intelligent species. And I've come to believe that the positive evolution of mankind depends on this revelation. I talk about this monumentous subject in both of my books.
I know our listeners can't wait to read your books, and I can't wait to read it again and again and again.
Oh.
Let's find out how our listeners can order your books right now.
Are you ready to start your soul search? As a special offer to our listeners, the controversial and mind-expanding books, The Day She Cut God Loose and Is This the Best God Could Do? Written by noted author and mystic Sarah Terry, is also available in audio form on audible.com and amazon.com.
Sarah, it's so good to have you back with us again. Your thought-provoking ideas and beliefs have stirred up a lot our listeners' souls.
Well, I'm certainly flattered to hear that. And it's good we stir our souls. And we have to bear them. It's the only way we can sort out bad ideas from good ones.
I agree. In the chapter you titled A Godless World, you talk about how the ancients were sold a phony premise of human smallness. What do you mean by this?
The Western world, to a large degree, lives with the idea that it is a big God, little human world. Now, the Iron Age might have been a very freaky time to have lived in for the common man, and understandably so. But the idea of reality that the ancients came up with represented their fear-fueled mindset that we somehow inherited.
So you're suggesting that the premise of human smallness that we currently live with might need upgrading?
Yes, absolutely. We've updated the Constitution of the United States of America on the grounds of some of what it said no longer served us.
That's true. Can you tell us a little bit about the Enlightenment and how that pertains to human development?
Yes, the Enlightenment came to pass in the 18th century because religion was not able to answer all our questions regarding the nature of this reality, so we turned to science. And we are still in the Enlightenment, in my opinion, 300 years into it, to be precise.
So you're suggesting that there is no antagonism between science and spirituality?
Yes, all the philosophical theories belonging to spirituality and metaphysics should be meshed with the progressive ideas of the quantum sciences. Doing this will surely push us into another long-awaited evolutionary leap, and maybe we're on the precipice of this.
Sarah, you refer in your book to folks asking, why are we here? Can you tell us what you found out when you asked people if they know why they are here?
Yeah, so some time ago, I surveyed numerous people at the hair salon, in the deli line at the supermarket. I once asked a cop who pulled me over for speeding, and I asked everyday people the same question, why were you born? But no one could answer me. No one. This blew my mind. The fact that most of us have no idea why we were born, this should sober us up instantly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Wow. Sarah, can you talk to us a little bit about pain and suffering and why we have to endure it?
That's a great question, Ron. So the monotheistic idea of reality insists we are separate from God, who himself exists in another dimension of eternal bliss, not having to endure all that humans do. This idea is repugnant to me, and it makes me a little hot under the collar, to be honest.
Yes, I could understand that.
So how loving would our Maker be if he created a world of suffering that he himself didn't have to experience? This is totalitarianism in its essence. The masses suffer while the leader does not.
Is this not a worthy theory? Then what have you replaced it with?
Well, I've replaced it with the empowering idea that whoever or whatever intelligence existed billions of years ago, it's separated into tiny fragments, dispersed in the Big Bang, which science attests is fact, and we are individual aspects of that divine energy evolving into something more.
Evolution, right?
Yeah. Using the theory of evolution as a working model, the creator of the evolutionary process becomes man, and the suffering that man endures is his. He is not separate, and human beings are therefore divine.
So why do we have to suffer as part of our evolution towards goodness, knows what?
Suffering is part of living in a world of opposites. We would not know what up was if we didn't know what down was. In would have no meaning if the word out didn't exist. Light would have no meaning for its opposite of dark. So pain and suffering exist because their opposite exists.
So pain is a byproduct of the fact that we live in a world of opposites?
Yes, but not a permanent one, perhaps. I possess the firm conviction that we can limit the amount of pain we experience here on Earth by evolving our current model of who we believe ourselves to be and how reality gets created.
You refer to building a belief system in the last chapter of your nonfiction book. Can you talk to our listeners about this?
Yes, it's high time we commit to building a better world by sifting through all religious ideas, East and West, spiritual philosophies, and the mind-blowing findings of quantum science that pertain to the potential of a magnificent reality, a reality of purpose and human flourishing, with love and acceptance for all as its foundation.
Why?
Well, building a belief system rather than inheriting one is what a conscious race of people should be doing. There is too much suffering in the world, Ron, and we can begin the process of eliminating much of it just by building a cosmically reasonable, cosmically progressive belief system. We then stand a better chance of attaining planetary enlightenment. The light ages, we could call this.
That sounds optimistic and rational to me. Well, Sarah, this has been more than informative, entertaining, and thought-provoking. Our listeners can't wait to hear more. And now we have some questions from our listeners.
It's time now for our phone-in segment where you, our audience, get to ask the questions. Give us a call at 212-714-7122 to ask Sarah your question. And now, let's go to our question coordinator.
Sarah Terry is available for book signings and lectures. Contact our show producer, Ron Denner, at 212-714-7122. Call the same number to ask Sarah any question on the air now. 212-714-7122. Our first question is from Carolyn, who asks, what is the main thing to do to develop your spirituality?
Go within, ask questions like, who am I? What am I? What is the premise of this existence? What is my purpose? Why was I born? To develop spiritually, Carolyn, one must remove one's attention from the external reality and begin the process of deep introspection.
Our next question is from Robert, who asks, can you believe in more than one supreme being?
Hi, Robert. So the Hindus believe in many gods, but it is my belief that God is everything. Nothing exists which isn't an aspect of God, like drops belonging to a vast ocean.
We have another question from Jim who asks, what is meant by New Age?
Well, blended with spiritual ideas from the East, the New Age movement is a revival of the New Thought movement that existed in America, in England at the turn of the 19th century. A New Ager focuses primarily, Jim, on the healing and the training of one's mind, knowing that by doing so, they are more able to experience and radiate joy.
Great questions from our listeners. Can't wait for more. Listeners, this is how you order Sarah's books.
Are you ready to start your soul search? As a special offer to our listeners, the controversial and mind-expanding books, The Day She Cut God Loose and Is This the Best God Could Do, written by noted author and mystic Sarah Terry, is also available in audio form on audible.com and amazon.com.
Sarah, it's been an incredible experience speaking with you, and I look forward to more insight into you and your books. I'm looking forward to our next show with you to discuss so much more. Thank you for being with us now.
Are you ready to start your soul search? As a special offer to our listeners, the controversial and mind-expanding books, The Day She Cut God Loose and Is This the Best God Could Do, written by noted author and mystic Sarah Terry, is also available in audio form on audible.com and amazon.com. Tune in to our next informative and entertaining show, Bearing Our Souls, featuring Sarah Terry, every Sunday morning at 5 a.m. This has been a Ron Danner production in association with Creative Productions.